Music notes are written symbols that represent musical sounds. There are many different types of written notes, because each different type of note shows how long or short each musical sound should be. Music notes can be written on a music staff. A music staff is a set of horizontal lines, one on top of another. When notes are written on a music staff, they show how high or low a musical sound should be. When a note is high, we say it has a high pitch. And when a note is low, we say it has a low pitch. The music staff has a total of 5 lines. We count these lines starting from the bottom to the top. The lowest line is number 1, and the highest line is number 5. There are spaces in between each line. We count spaces from the bottom to the top also. There are 4 spaces. The lowest space is number 1, and the highest space is number 4. Music notes can be drawn on lines. A note that is drawn on a line can be called a line note. It is drawn so that the line passes right through the middle of the note. Notes may also be drawn in spaces. A note that is drawn in a space can be called a space note. A space note is drawn so that it touches the line above and the line below it, but no part of the line crosses through. Notes that are written on higher lines or spaces have a higher sound. Notes that are drawn on lower lines or spaces have a lower sound. When a series of musical sounds rise higher, we say that they are ascending. When musical sounds drop lower, we say that they are descending. Sometimes a series of musical sounds ascend or descend little by little or step by step. When we want to write notes to show sounds that ascend or descend step by step, we write them on the staff following a pattern going from line to space to line to space, and so on. Musical sounds can skip or leap higher or lower also. Written notes for these sounds are further apart on the staff, showing how large the skips and leaps are. The distance between 2 pitches is called an interval. Steps, skips, and leaps are all types of intervals. Intervals describe how far apart pitches are. When we sing, we often use special names for pitches called solfege names. There are 7 solfege names for pitches. If we are ascending in pitch, we sing do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. And after ti, we start over again with do. If we're going down in pitch, we sing the same names but in reverse order. Do, ti, la, so, fa, mi, re, do. When we play instruments, we often use letter names to represent notes written on the staff. The first 7 letters of the alphabet, A through G, are used for naming notes. As notes are written higher on the staff, we can name them by going forward in the alphabet until we reach the letter G, and then we start over again with the letter A. If we are naming notes that are moving downward on the staff, we will be saying the alphabetical names in reverse order. An instrument like a flute or a recorder makes high-pitched sounds. These are called treble sounds, meaning higher pitched. Notes written for these instruments will be written on a treble staff. A treble clef sign is a symbol written on a staff, making it a treble staff. The treble clef sign is sometimes called the G clef sign because part of its purpose is to mark the line that is called letter G. Part of the treble clef sign circles around the second line of the staff, marking this line as the G line, and any note written on this line becomes a G. Any note written in the next higher space is called an A, because when naming ascending notes, we start over again in the alphabet after letter G. Any note written on the line above the A space is called a B, and this pattern continues in alphabetical order. When we write descending notes, we must name them in reverse alphabetical order. If we know that a note written on the second line of the treble staff is called G, we can figure out the letter name of any other note on the treble staff by saying the alphabet forward or backward. However, thinking through the alphabet to figure out the name of every note takes a long time, and music sometimes moves along pretty quickly. To learn to play music on an instrument well, we need to memorize the letter names of every line and space of the treble staff. Luckily, there are easy ways to remember the names of the lines and spaces. The easiest way to remember these is to use mnemonics, which are words or phrases to help us memorize the order of the letters. There are 4 spaces on the staff. Reading from the bottom to the top, the names of the spaces spell the word face. There are 5 lines on the staff. Reading from the bottom to the top, the names of the lines are E, G, B, D, F. This, of course, doesn't spell anything, but we can remember the order by saying phrases like, elephants go bouncing down freeways. The first letter of each of those words is the letter name of that line. The phrase is just silly enough that we can remember it easily. There are many common phrases to remember the lines, including every good boy does fine, or every good boy deserves fudge, or Elvis's guitar broke down Friday. You can use one of these phrases or even make up one of your own to help you remember the order of the lines. If we want to write a note that is higher than the space above the top line of the staff, or lower than the bottom line, we use a short line called a ledger line. We can add as many ledger lines as we need to be able to write higher and lower notes. If we plan to play a large instrument such as a tuba, trombone, or string bass, we will read notes from a bass staff. The word bass means low-pitched. A bass staff is marked with a bass clef sign, which marks the F line, or the 4th line from the bottom. The lines and spaces of bass clef have different letter names than the treble clef, so we use different phrases to remember the letter names. To remember the spaces of the bass clef, we can say the phrase, all cows eat grass. We can remember the lines by saying, great big dogs fight animals. If we play a keyboard instrument, which uses both high and low-pitched notes, we will need to read from both the treble and bass clefs. Often, the treble staff is placed over the bass staff, with space in between for lyrics. But technically, there is only one ledger line between the 2 staves. The note that goes on that ledger line is called middle C, because it is in the middle between the 2 staves. When we see these 2 staves joined together by a brace, we call it a grand staff.